women, business owners, and Black women businesses forward. And you birthed this idea that really turned into an amazing TV program, which was about her business. And DAYO was one of the brands featured. So I appreciate all that you've done and how you've been a trailblazer, as well as many other business women. And so I'm glad to welcome you back for a second time to the WEOP conference. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Yolanda. You know, I am a huge, huge fan of yours. And I am now a tremendous fan of the WEOP family and organization. I mean, what you guys have built here is truly phenomenal in terms of thinking through how important it is to put a spotlight on the trials and triumphs of women in business. And so I'm incredibly happy to be here as both a teacher and a student, but more importantly, a supporter of WEOP and you always, Yolanda, always.
I love it. Back to you. Okay, so let's get into it. I mean, one of these things, I thought this topic was so important to reimagine the future. And I think we can say COVID-19 in front of us is one of those drivers that has really challenged us to think about our business. And, you know, while I think many of us have been approached with challenges, it's also allowed us to birth new ideas. It's allowed us to build new capabilities. It's allowed us to do things that we probably would have never done if we weren't faced with quarantine. And to couple that with, we've been through a lot of societal changes and awareness and upheaval, and that too has some impact on our business. So I want you, let's start talking about the new norm. What is it really? And how do you think about this whole notion of the new norm?
You know, it's so funny. We all went into this new mindset and this shift as of March 11th last year, when the World Health Organization said we were in a pandemic, and we were like, wait, what is that, right? What is a pandemic? And so as a result of that, immediately the idea of normal became challenged. And immediately after that, we started to hear the language around what's going to be our new normal. And what was interesting about that is it was a question of what is going to be our new normal. And immediately for me, what that meant if it is a question, then it means that we get to answer it. Meaning, what I have encouraged anyone that I speak to about a new normal is to ensure that you are participating in the process and the narrative of what normal is for you. Because for many, what was normal prior to March 11th was not normal for everyone. And therefore, we were all trying to find ourselves living effectively, or more, more specifically defined, more efficiently in someone else's normal.
Yeah.
And so because we had a reset, right? It is, when you get your phone and it says, reset, it's a reset, everything is new. You get to decide what language you want in there. You get to decide the background of your phone. You get to decide all of those things. So when we talk about new normal, it is not one thing. I think what's new about normal is that there are many normals, and many normals can exist in one place. And I think that more importantly, now more than ever before, participate in the process and the narrative of what normal is to you. That is how I define normal, is what is serving me, my aspirations, my objectives, and my community.
Wow. I mean, it's so mind-blowing to say, like, no longer do you need to live in someone else's construct. Go develop, build your own construct, and think about what that means. Even though there may be some pieces that have to survive in other places, the challenge of we get to build is like, that's like creating art, it's like, it's a new canvas for us in front of us. And I like that you're saying there is nothing that really falls into normal. Really?
Yeah. It's, and I'll say, I love the way you described me in the beginning in terms of being like a strategic thinker. I try and think about solutions, right? And so when we think about solutions and normal, together, is sometimes the disruption of normal is where the solution lives.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important for the normal to not be defined by one group or one organization or one one construct of normal. There are just several layers to it. Not the topic today, but I think about the education system and what normal is, kids going to school every day. My 14-year-old son has thrived in virtual learning. And he has friends that, he talks to all the time who have not. Like, they're like, when school opens up, if it opens up one day a week for 15 minutes, I need to be there because that's where I thrive. But my son is like, this is good for me. Now, we have to be mindful that sometimes I'm like, hey, wake up.
Well, my kids think it's good for them, but I'm cooking 3-course meals at lunchtime. So I'm like, go figure, right?
Yes, exactly. I didn't say it was the best norm for me either. I didn't say that. But here we are.
I think that's a good insight. I mean, one of the things, like, you started talking about the education system, which is one industry. If you have business women who are listening that cross multiple industries, what advice would you give to women like me or others that are listening around how can we effectively show up and participate and be a part of what now we're saying there is no norm, survive and thrive in a place where the rules are being reset right now in front of us?
For anyone in business, and women especially, we are all of the human race, which is the only race, right? But to be very honest, right, it's the human race. And so as women, though, we have, instincts and things that come into place, which really make us so ideal for running businesses. One of the things that I certainly suggest and recommend and support for women in business is a really very true understanding of what you're solving for and what you're serving for. And in that process, one of the things that has been uncovered in the last year is in establishing these new norms, right, is how do I tap into the resource of solutions from the lens of I have something that is unique and designed for a segment. I really encourage us to cherish the niche small thing in order to grow into the next big thing. What happens in establishing the opportunity for the niche small thing is that we really get to hone in on the effects that it has on your target audience. Oftentimes, when we think about products and services, we have this idea that it automatically works for everyone, but then that serves the construct as we are all the same. The reality of it is you're often solving problem for a niche, and that niche can be this size or this size. We can certainly get into that, but let's work on the idea of launching that minimum viable product and looking at the ecosystem of something like the Lean Startup. I love that book. I talk about all the time with Eric Ries, and saying, how do I launch the product, learn from the launch, listen to the feedback, tweak, and keep going. Not launch the product, hear the feedback, get emotional, and throw my dream away.
Facts.
Right? So when we talk about women in business now is do it. That's the thing. Do it and hear the feedback, learn from it. And feedback is not facts, it's information. Right? So if we lean into the information and how it really impacts the business, I loved a few years ago, you guys remember when iPhone launched a feature where you could group video chat.
Oh, you can do
it.
We're
all doing now, right? We're all doing it now. It's like, this is what we do all day. But they launched a feature where you could group video chat. So we have been group texting all day. And then all of a sudden, boom, you can hit the button and it could be a group video chat. Certainly that was the feedback from some group in there, right? Said, we should be able to actually video chat as a part of this process. We love talking and texting to each other, but can't we actually see each other? And iPhone, Apple did the work to launch that feature. They launched it and immediately they said, wait, there's a flaw here. When you do that, whether the person answers or not, you can hear them in their home environment. So I'm on a group chat. We call Yolanda. You remember that? Yolanda doesn't answer.
And you have
And
access to my whole background.
right, and now you have access to my whole background. So they then went and had to fix that. So they still have the group video chat feature, but they pulled it for a second, made further tweaks, and they came back with the correction just in time for us to be in what, a quarantine, work from home, always virtual, always on some type of video chat environment. The point that I'm making here is what I find often, especially women of color, is because we have invested so much time, so much of our talent, and so much of our own capital, right? Because we know that one of the challenges is access to capital, that the emotion that comes with the feedback often disrupts our forward momentum.
Mm.
And so I just want to be really specific and intentional around do it in spite of the feedback.
Yeah.
Hear the feedback and react to it according to how it serves your ultimate objectives, because some feedback was never your intention. And so, you're reacting to that, but it wasn't what you were trying to do anyway. And so it may not be relevant to you. I hope that
I think that's super powerful. The reality is, because we're in a new norm, your customers, your clients may tell you about new needs that they have.
Absolutely.
And so we have to be open to listening. And I will tell you, when we walked into COVID, before we even got to COVID, I was like, ooh, I really want to make DAYO even more financially accessible to women, And so I was working really hard on like, how can I effectively do this so I can get to a more affordable price point for women? And as we got into COVID, I didn't know we would get there, but once we got there, I was like, wow, I really need to ensure that this is more financially accessible for more women, because the need of loungewear is even more pervasive. But if I wasn't open to that feedback, I would have never heard it.
Well, I just think that I love that you call your line loungewear, but it is the most beautiful pieces. So I'll tell you a funny story. I don't think I've told you this story. I literally put on a DAYO set one evening, and I had a couple of friends over, and I came down and they were like, "Where are you going?" And I was like, "This is," I was like, "This is my lounge."
The living room.
And so so a friend of mine went upstairs in my closet and pulled out a pair of, like, I think they were, I really think they were Jimmy Choo. It was like, that outfit deserves, and they were like Swarovski crystal ones, right? They're like, that outfit deserves this show. And so I literally was in my home, like leaning on the couch, just talking with friends, maybe having wine in this DAYO wear. And I was like, yeah, this is it. It was a redefinition of the narrative around its loungewear, but you feel beautiful in it. You want to show it off. Like, I actually don't wear DAYO when I'm by myself. I only wear it like with company. It's such a showpiece. And so, even seeing you in that piece now, and I'm like, yes, like that's Zoom call wear. That's what you should call it. It's like work from home wear, because who really wants to put on a full outfit? But your products are so beautiful, and I can't leave this conversation without underscoring that.
Oh, thank you so much. It's one of those things, just like, if you listen to your customers, like, it helps you get there, whether it's on your product, on your price point, whatever it is. But I think more than ever, I think the fact that our consumers and customers are evolving real time and they're creating their new norm, I can't say enough about, we have to be listening to what they're experiencing, what they need, what they want, and how we can best meet their needs at this time. So I think that's really, really great feedback. And that really sets us up for how we go pivot, because if you have a baseline of information, the pivot doesn't become quite as hard. It starts to feel like I might have a roadmap to how I pivot, because are telling me what they need. But you have to be open and you have to be objective about receiving that feedback, which I do think you're talking about us as leaders, the mindset that we have to be in, a mindset of learning, a mindset of growing, and a mindset of not having fear that we failed if something gets pushed on when we do launch it. So I love that. I think you've given us some really good insight. I want you to take us personal. Like, as you've hit this new norm in COVID, as a woman, as an executive, as a Black woman, as a mom, tell me some of the challenges that you've experienced that you've had to either take that feedback and adjust yourself, or just in living what you've had to like cope with.
I'll start with the personal, and I would say, working from home for me, I've had it's like I'm in a 12-step program with this, in that literally I am constantly evolving what works for me. Where I'm sitting right now is probably the fourth office setting that I've had in a year, all in my home. And listen, I have a very small home overall, but I just keep moving to what works. But I'm also moving to accommodate, that I'm working from home, and I have a son who's schooling from home. And so I'm like, you know what, he needs, I can sit here all day, but I need for him to move 3 times a day. So what I did was create 3 different spaces for him at home so that he can go from 2 classes at a time in 1 position type of thing. So that's been like, that was a challenge at first, because I was in the mindset of, the old norm was I would go into an office and that was my office. Now I may go to other offices for other meetings, but if I'm in my office, this is my office and this is where I sit. But I'm at home now. And so I can certainly be more thoughtful about what works for me when. A few weeks ago, I had a small injury. I literally, I don't even know how I did this. I was on the Peloton and tore my knee up, Yolanda. And I had to go sit on the couch and prop it and put ice on it as my workplace, right? And so I had to reimagine everything there. So those are the types of challenges. To your point, forcing stops in my day to go and not just feed my child, for me to eat.
Exactly.
I would sit here hours upon hours. Sometimes at the end of the day, I would get up, Yolanda, and my whole body would just ache from having sat in one position. Not good. Not good. So the position that I'm in now, like 2 steps right here to my right, is actually my little home gym. And again, it sounds like everything is real fabulous. It's super small, but it's just my bike and some weights. And sometimes, guess what I do when I'm on calls where I don't have video? I wasn't even expecting to show you this, but guess what I do? I start doing like some of my workout, like right here I do, because I have to, right? It's like, I couldn't do this in an office, a year ago, but these are some of the things I do.
That's strong.
From a work standpoint, I'm I love disruption, right? So I'm disrupting the concept of normal. I'm disrupting the concept of pivot, right? So in my younger years, when I was a lot more flexible, I really leaned into the artistry of dance. And so when you talk about a pivot literally means that I was going this direction and now I'm going that direction. And so what we are really leaning into is the idea of not a pivot, but some transition. Because you think about the Titanic didn't need to turn around. It just needed to transition, either a little hard to the left or a little more to the right. And so as we think about some of the work challenges that we've had, it's really about communicating and socializing. What are the new opportunities that are before us that exist as a result of this reset? Now I can go into a bunch of stats and facts as to what that means, right? But a year ago today, I will assert in this moment that there is a certain age group or a demographic, right, that engaged with social media. Some, you may have done some gaming on your wireless devices. You may have used a couple of features beyond your phone and your text and your email.
Yeah.
And now we have been accelerated into an environment where we have to all kind of master this wireless, or more importantly, this digital world in a way. And so the mastery of that doesn't happen overnight. And so one of the things that we've been doing as a part of our organization, especially on the live side, is really excavating the understanding of what needs to be true for us to be successful, not just in the new normal, but in the normal that we are creating,
Mm.
right? We get to be a part of that process. We get to participate in the language that's created as a result of it, as well as the narrative. And so that's the work that we've been doing. And don't be afraid of that process. Like there's some hard facts and finding in that. And it's an opportunity to really say, I know we used to do this before, and we actually did it really well. The challenge is that won't work again. I landed in to run a business that was built on 50,000 people being shoulder to shoulder in an environment. Like that was the success of that business. That business, that can't be the success metric anymore.
Yeah.
And so, we have completely not pivoted to say that we don't ever want to see 50,000 people shoulder to shoulder in an environment. But what are other ways in which people still want to convene and connect? Because that desire hasn't changed in people. And any research that you do, people still have a desire to convene and connect. And some people will say, oh, I have Zoom fatigue. But I bet they're on this conference in this conversation right now, because what is the other opportunity? Should we all fly to Atlanta or Dallas or New York or LA for a conference? No.
Right.
This is our opportunity. So how do we empower the impact of this opportunity to really be a measure of success for all involved?
I love that. I mean, I'll tell you, your research confirms they want to get together, and Florida confirms it for me because they're on the streets right now. But I mean, part of what you're talking about is technology. And I do think, like, when I think about this new norm, as you're talking about, the new norm or the evolving norm of what is in front of you really does stay rooted in some level of technology, digital activation, integration, systems, all of that good stuff. And I love that you talk a little bit about social media and what that means. I will tell you, a lot of our WEOP business women are really trying to figure out what should their presence be, how should they talk about themselves. Like, tell us a little bit about how you approach just your personal life around social media, and have you reimagined the stories? I know I have. Personally, just a little bit, I've given people much more of an inside view of like my personal life than what I've ever done. So no one has ever seen me work out. No one's ever seen any hobbies. No one's ever, but I'm showing a little bit now, maybe a lot of it. So talk a little bit about like technology, what that means, and how you've allowed it to be a story either for yourself or your business in some form or fashion.
Well, I would say there's two lessons in that question for me. One is I don't want to say hate, because I don't really hate anything.
Yeah, but let's really dislike it.
I do not enjoy social media.
Okay.
I don't. One, because for me to post something, it's ridiculous the amount of time it takes, because I'm way too thoughtful. I'm a storyteller. So I'm like trying to give y'all like a whole soliloquy, and that's not what's needed in that space. But what the first lesson is, just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's not necessary, and therefore you can hire someone to do it. Mm-hmm. And hiring someone to do it, I have a 14-year-old who's home doing work through school, but I also have a 24-year-old who's a grown man who does social media for sport. Like, that's what they do for sport. So whenever I really need something done, I'm like, can you help me? Can you just make this, and in 30 seconds, he's like, yeah, do this, Mom. I'm like, so it's leaning into help for those areas. The other part to that is when you are a business, meaning you have launched something, and I don't even like the word small business because that's subjective, right? When you are a business, meaning you have launched something, you and DAYO, you are a business, Yolanda, and the execution of that business is DAYO. Your audience needs to understand the passion and the beauty behind the story and the storyteller. Mm. And so flood the airwaves with your story as much as you can. Get it out there. Over communicate to your audience what you're doing, because your audience is a group of aspiring business owners. They are aspiring customers, or they are existing customers. And you want them to understand that this product is so great because I am on it nonstop. This is where my passion is. And this is who I am. Like you said, I'm working out. I'm using this time and this quarantine to be healthy. And so you're showing them different parts of you as the person who envisioned, the visionary behind this brand. When you are a business, people need to have access to you and your business. And you can have a personal you that is outside of all of that, right? Like we don't need to know your dating status maybe here, right? But maybe we really need to understand the way in which you are approaching connectivity with other women and how they are experiencing your products. Lean into the assets that are available to you and that are, for all intent and purposes, I'm in media. So I know how much it costs to run a schedule of 30-second spots on a media channel. That's very different than doing it on social media. Yeah. And so there's a lot more access and availability to business owners as you think about how to engage and socialize your products, leverage those platforms.
I love it. I think those are two great pieces of advice that I'm taking and I'm still working on, because there is this challenge between keeping some privacy in my life and still continue to drive the business. But I definitely can tell you I've taken that challenge head on since we've been in COVID. So people do see me more, than they've ever before COVID.
Well, I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it. I have. It's so good to see you in all of these ways, all your hiking.
I was like, and all my trap music love. So, I think we'll see even more from me. I know we'll see even more from you. Like, Staci, this has been an amazing conversation with you. We're so appreciative to have you a part of the WEOP family. And these nuggets are just awesome. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I am a huge fan, and I can't wait to see more success from you and continued success from WEOP and all of its members. Congratulations on another great conference.
Thank you. You guys have a good one. We're closing out. Bye.
Thank you.